joining me today. And for those of you that are watching on Facebook or listening to the podcast episode, because I think we might as well just make this into a podcast episode, why not, and promote your new podcast, which is very exciting. So Nettie, welcome to this podcast/video, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here, honestly. This is
Me too. So exciting. So Nettie, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about your podcast journey.
Okay.
And before we dive in and get started, I just want to say congratulations to Nettie, because she's one of my clients or past clients, who is a real action taker, and she doesn't wait for perfectionist stuff to happen. So Nettie is a mother of 6 kids and also has no microphone, yet runs a podcast from her mobile. Isn't that cool? I love that.
Yes, definitely. I don't have all the things yet, but actually your program has helped me to move past all that perfectionist mindset that I was having. So
yeah, I'm glad to hear that. So why don't you tell us what actually made you want to start a podcast in the first place, and how long were you wanting to start one before it officially went launched and live to the public?
Well, first of all, I love listening to podcasts myself. And ever since I discovered podcasts, I was hooked. So I had been thinking I wanted one, and I just never took the steps for it. And not until I came across I came across a YouTube video where you were speaking to someone else. I even heard of who you were, and I looked you up and everything. And from the first episode, I was like so hooked with how your personality was just so genuine and so honest. And you mentioned your program, but I think it had already started. It had already started.
Starting, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it started like a couple of days right before it started.
Oh, okay. So I'm like, I'm just gonna message and see. And it ended up you put me in the group. So I remember starting late though. Like I didn't start right in the beginning.
That's right. I think we're like a week in actually, now that you mention it. Yeah, because between like the actual process of getting you into the program, that's what it would have been.
Yeah, there was like a little delay there too, but I was like, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna find a way to do it, and so yeah.
Can I just say that's another thing I love about you, Nettie, was like some people, and I totally get this because it's a limiting belief. They go, well, I won't join the program because it's already started, so I'll join the next one. And it's like, if you do that, you're slowing down your own progress. Like if you'd done that, Nettie, you wouldn't actually be starting until now. Do you know what I mean? Your podcast wouldn't have been launched in November, and you wouldn't have all these episodes out into the world already. So like, that's amazing, that you actually just took the action regardless of when the program started. You didn't worry about all the details. You just made it happen, which is what I'm like too. So I love that about you.
And I wasn't always like that. It's been a journey to get to this point. But like a lot of the lessons I would listen to, I would be nursing the baby. I actually when it officially gave me the message that it was approved, I was nursing the baby. And I was like, I'll try to be quiet and like screaming and like just making the motions because I was so excited when I got the notification, but I was nursing her. And so like just that in itself, I'm very proud of, to be honest, because I didn't let this period of time that I'm in right now, this season of having a new baby, she's a year old right now, so she's still very little. And I didn't let that stop me from taking the next step, because that's so important, is that I've learned to just take the very next step and not go too far out, because then I get paralyzed by that perfection and how huge the project is and I won't do anything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's a really good thing to touch on, because some people are very present focused or past focused or future focused. So for some people, looking out into the future and having these big goals and intentions for their podcast can be really overwhelming, because you're like, that feels like 100 steps away, as opposed to just bringing it like a bit smaller and chunking it down and going, just getting started is enough right now. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to have all the things. It's just taking that first step, and then the second step comes, and then the third step. It's kind of like, with children, you don't expect them to get up and start walking and start running straight away. No, they just start with getting up to begin with, and then it's taking the steps. It's the same thing with a podcast and with a business. It's no different. So what do you think? So firstly, how long did you want to start your podcast for? Had it been on your mind for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or months or years? What was it for you?
I think the first time I ever thought of it was a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago? Oh my goodness. Yeah, this is a really common theme I'm noticing in the podcasting industry.
Yeah, so it was a while. And you see, I didn't take any steps on my own, really. And I knew, because I'm also a life coach, I knew the importance of life coaching, right? So I think that also helped me tremendously to be able to know that the investment I was going to make was going to benefit me, because I was going to invest in you and your skills that you already had, and it's going to take me there so much faster than me trying to figure it out on my own, because all that energy and your mental space taken to try to figure out the next thing, you know what I mean? Like that,
Totally.
you give up, you get frustrated, you're like, forget it, it's too much, it's taking me too long. But you had it all laid out in your program, and like just step by step by step by step, you know?
Yeah, break it down.
And yeah, I was just gonna say something else, that you made sure that those were available during the group time only, right? You told us these are the videos. This is when it's on live. You can, once the program's over, you're not gonna have access to this. So I was like, okay, I have to watch them. I have to do the work, because if not, it's like if I knew or thought that I would be able to watch them later, nah, that wouldn't happen. So I love that your program is that way. You only get to do the program like live, and it's not like recorded for you for later, because, and that's how we work. We'll be like, it's there, we'll do it later. But knowing that I'm walking with you, you're walking with us each week, but we had to do our part. You know, we had to log on, we had to watch the videos, we had to do the homework.
Yeah.
You know, that's really
I think,
important. I'm glad that you did that.
Yeah, I'm actually glad that you gave me that feedback, and so did some of the other members actually, because I know for me, when I've signed up to programs, it's like that lifetime access can be great for our own certainty to make us feel safe and be like, well, I can always come back to it later. But the problem with that is that we don't necessarily feel the urgency and the commitment to show up each step of the way, because we're like, oh, we'll get to it later. And that just procrastinates things, doesn't it? And then you don't actually get round to it. And then you're like, crap, I just invested that money and I didn't do anything with it. Whereas by actually going, okay, you need to do your 50% and show up and do the class, and this is the small bit of homework for this week, and then knowing that it's got to be done next week. In terms of Parkinson's law, you know you've got to get it done, so you prioritize it and you make it happen, and then you get to the end of the program and boom, your podcast was up, you know, like up and out there. I think even before the end of the program, wasn't it, from memory?
Yeah, I think it was just that week before.
Yeah, which is great. So how did you, I know for you never actually, how did you submit your podcast? Because I know you did it through iTunes, but then it took a while for them to get back to you, didn't they? So you went onto Spotify?
So I used, it's called Anchor.
Anchor, yes.
So I put it there, and from there they submitted it to the different platforms, and Spotify approved it right away. But then I would get like an email like here and there as they were approving it for the other platforms. And so I didn't get on Apple iTunes right away, but that took some time.
Yeah.
But still, that first one with Spotify was when I was so excited, because I was like, oh my gosh, it got approved, you know. I didn't even know there were that many platforms of podcasts either. You know, I thought it was just like a couple of podcast platforms. I didn't know there were so many. So yeah, that was something I didn't know before.
Yeah. And it's cool, isn't it? Because it's like you upload to iTunes or even Spotify or Anchor. There's so many different ways to actually get your podcast up and out there, but the more platforms you can be on, the better. It means you have more reach, you know, because not everyone that, you know, like I personally don't even listen to iTunes. I have a podcasting app that I open and I download and subscribe to podcasts on there, and I listen to it through that app. I don't even go to iTunes unless someone sends me the direct link to iTunes. Yeah. And I listen to a lot of my podcasts through Spotify now, and a lot of people don't even have Spotify still, you know, so you've just got to kind of like spread the net wide and be on as many platforms as you can, because as I said, not everyone's going to be on all of them. So it's about catering to as many people as you can in different ways, which is really good. So for you, Nettie, the thing that was really standing in your way for all these years for starting your podcast was mostly overwhelm. Is that right? Was there anything else that was preventing you or getting in your way or keeping you stuck? Or
I think just that the overwhelm, thinking that the project is so huge. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do first. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know what I'm going to call it. I don't know, you know, what's the little picture going to look like, my logo going to look like. I'm not my mom and I have all the kids, and how am I going to do it? Like, when am I going to find time to podcast? You know, I think that was a big one, because, you know, I have a lot going on. I don't like to say I'm busy, but I have a fruitful life, a full life.
Ooh,
so
I love that reframe. That's very good. So life coaching, I love it.
It was really hard to get past that, right? And I think that's primarily why I never started it, because it felt so overwhelming. It felt like too many pieces and I didn't know where to start. So didn't do it at all.
Yeah, and it feels like a lot of decisions to make. Like you actually utilize the Podcast Launch Queens private Facebook group really, really well. Like you actually posted a couple of different cover arts, which is the graphic for those of you that don't know. For when you search a podcast, it's not just the name, a little graphic pops up. And I know for you had like 4 different options. You popped it in the group. You're like, which one looks best? What would attract to my ideal, listener avatar better? I thought that was really smart, because then you get feedback from people. It's not just you in your own head and your own mind thinking, I think it should be this, but I'm not quite sure. Like you actively utilize the group, and now you have a great graphic and it looks wonderful.
That's so important. I want to share that it was hard for me to do that, to share. But I knew that if I was going to progress in the group, like progress in the program and get my podcast out there, that I needed to be vulnerable and share what I was working on as I was working on it, because I may think one thing and that's not what my audience needs, and getting the feedback you're vulnerable because they might comment they don't like it or change this or change that. And you realize, well, hey, this isn't as great as I thought it was, but that's okay. That's where we're there to grow. And it was so important. That was a huge step in me getting it done, was to be active in the program and say, look, I'm committing to doing this with a group and not on my own. Because obviously on my own, that wasn't working, So to get the most out of it, I thought that, and then you were so great at responding and giving me feedback, and that was so helpful because you were there like literally every step of the way. If I got stuck, you would help me through that. So I didn't get discouraged and just drop out like of other programs. You feel like you're not getting that
Support.
And then you're just like, well, it's really easy to just get discouraged and stop, even if you've invested money into it.
Yeah, I get that totally. There's actually a few things within that too, Nettie, which I really love was first, the vulnerability part. Do you know what I mean? Because when you do have a podcast, as you know now, and you do put your message out there, it is like that vulnerability hangover that you can get sometimes where it's like, oh my gosh, did I just totally overshare? Or I can't believe I just said that and now it's out there and I can't take it back. Oh my God. Do you know what I mean? Like there's ways to work up to feeling comfortable with being vulnerable. And if you can't share like a little bit of piece of the puzzle in like a private group with just a couple of people, then how are you going to, be able to share your message worldwide? You know what I mean? So it's really like those little steps that help prepare you for actually sharing yourself with the world, and I know that you're a woman of faith as well. And, I think you believe also that you're here for a reason. Do you know what I mean? Like you're here for a bigger purpose and a higher why and, all these things. And, your podcast can help you do that and have that outreach. And so by taking that little step of being, oh, this is outside my comfort zone, I'm sharing a bit of myself with these people in the same program, then you're going to feel more comfortable as your, comfort zone expands. You're like, oh, sharing a podcast episode now is not such a big deal. And I think what's really great about your podcast, the Speak Mama Life podcast, is that right? Speak Life Mama?
Speak Life Mama.
Speak Life Mama. I think the thing that I really loved about your first episode especially was you did not hold back. You just jumped in and you were super authentic about what was going on and your story and where you've been and all that sort of stuff. And that's to me made it really interesting because I was like, oh, I didn't know this about Nettie. Do you know what I mean? Oh, that's really interesting, or I can relate to that part. And that's what I really loved, was just that authenticity. You didn't hold back. You just went straight into it, which I think is really great because, vulnerability does, create connection and it breeds more connection, which is wonderful. The other thing too is actually, you're a life coach too. So the value in actually having someone that can guide you and, highlight your gaps and things that you need to work on. And I know for me, I wish, like, I didn't think of having a podcast for years before I started one, but I know lots of people that have. And if you just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, it just doesn't happen until, like, I know for me, the program that I created, Podcast Launch Queens, was literally the program, like I basically created it for a past version of myself. It was Olivia back in 2018. I was thinking, what did she need? What did she not have? What did she wish that she had that she had to learn the hard way or invest in all these other courses and programs to get the puzzle pieces together? And that's how Podcast Launch Queens was born. I was like, what do people actually need to know to have that long-term success? And how many episodes do you have out now, Nettie?
I think it's 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, which is amazing.
But when we did it in November, it was November. By the end of the year, it was up. I mean, the end of the year could have been just bad, with everything that was going on. It could have been like, well, there goes the year, I didn't do anything. But I'm so grateful that I found you and I found out about your program, because I was able to end the year with, something that I had thought about, but not really taking any action at the beginning of the year. It was just like something that just ended up happening at the end of the year, and I'm so grateful for. And I felt good about it. I felt positive about stepping into the next year, knowing that no matter what happens, no matter what comes, there's always that opportunity if we are open to take that step. If we're willing to do the next thing, there's always opportunity. So it helped my mindset end the year in a positive way, in a hopeful state, and to move forward, with everything that's been going on. A lot of people are really having a hard time with what's been happening. And I had my ups and downs too throughout the year too. And so it was actually, so you doing this, you creating this program for past version of yourself actually is a huge blessing, because you're able to help other women, other people that want to do this, and those people are impacting people. And whoever listens to that podcast is probably going to impact somebody else. So it's like a ripple effect. It's just amazing when I think about it like that. Like that one bold step that you took, look how it ripples out. Look how it helps so many, when it was just you working on yourself first, and then you creating this program and doing it afraid, doing it scared, getting it out there to the world. And it just, so many other people can benefit from it. It's crazy. It's cool. Like you're in Australia, I'm in Houston, Texas. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing that you can connect with people all around the world. And like, just touching on that, there's a couple more things to talk about there. Like, you found me through being a guest on another podcast, which just shows the power of podcasting. Like, that's how you found mine, was because I guested on someone else's. And then you reached out to me. And funnily enough, I've had another sign up from the podcast that you listened to and found me on, someone else has found me. We had a call, and now she's signed into Podcast Launch Queens, which is really just amazing how podcasting can work like that. And I think too, like, I know for me, I wasn't always, like you said yourself, you've worked on yourself over the years and you've built up to this point. Same thing with myself, like it took me a while to realize the ripple effects that podcasting can have, because at the very beginning, you don't always know until you can conceptualize it, but until you experience it, you're like, oh, this is the power of podcasting, right? It does have ripple effects. Oh, it can change lives, all of that. And I think too, and I still have to remind myself of this too, is by speaking up and sharing my truth and my story, just like you do, Nettie, it actually gives others permission to do the same. Yeah, especially people that are scared to do that, or scared to be vulnerable, or scared of criticism and judgment. And that's some of the stuff that we, talked about in Podcast Launch Queens to overcome. Is like, for the most part, if you're coming from a well-intentioned place, your podcast will do well. It's not just for selfish reasons, and it comes from a healthy place too. Like, it's not, and also, can I just say, like, you're in the center of like the craziness of the world last year and right now, like being in America, there's a lot of stuff that's going on over there. And there's lots of things that there's lots of, I guess, excuses or reasons you could have come up with not to start your podcast and become a podcasting woman, and you've done it anyway, which I think is really great. And I think too, like, I think especially because of the pandemic, a lot of people have been unmotivated with the start of this year, because it's like that old energy, like seeping over into 2021. But you have to make a conscious decision of like, am I going to let all of the events from around the world stop me and prevent me and get in the way and be an excuse? Or am I going to let that be a reason to actually show up and start my podcast? Or, if you're already an existing podcaster like us, to actually get those episodes out there and provide hope, because as I said, you're religious as well. So it's kind of like, that this is not happening by mistake, by God's plan, source, whatever you want to call it. It's testing humanity for different reasons. We may not understand what they are yet. We might not fully ever understand, but if you can show up and be that light worker and shine that light to your people, the people in your world, your reality, and even quote unquote, the cold market that might stumble across your podcast, that might just help one person not seep into depression. Or, a mother, that's because, can you explain what your podcast is about a little bit to the people that are watching and listening to this, and then I'll expand a bit more.
Okay. So my podcast is primarily for moms, and it's just really that mom that has been on the bathroom floor crying, just in a closet, just feeling so overwhelmed, feeling that they're not that someone else can do a better job. That's part of my story, someone else can do a better job, because I am messing them up. You know, I'm not doing anything the way that it should be done, right? And just that feeling of loneliness and feeling that, you know, you just want to be done with it. You know, even the mom that's just ready to just leave her kids and just go, because it can be that lonely. So my podcast is, my hope for the podcast is to empower and encourage moms to believe that they are the best mom for their kids.
Yeah.
The best mom, not like how your mom did it, or your mother-in-law, or your friend, or whoever on social media, but you already have that in you. So that's who the podcast is for.
Yeah, I love that. So your podcast is really filling the need of feeling connected. As you said, your listeners, or the mums that you're wanting to attract into your podcast, it's for those women that are feeling really disconnected and also not feeling good enough, essentially, right? And struggling to juggle everything with being a mum and all the other things. Maybe you're telling me about that in the program. You know, you naturally have people come into your world and ask you, Nettie, you've got 6 kids. How do you do it all? How do you do it so peacefully and with grace? And that's a huge market in itself. You know, a lot of mums these days, especially in the modern times like now, they have so much to do and so many hats to wear and so many responsibilities. And the fact that you already attract people naturally without having a global audience initially wanting to know the answers to that. And now you get to bring that to a global audience, which is going to be amazing. Because when I think about mums, you know, crying on the bathroom floor in the cupboard, that's so sad. Do you know what I mean? Like, it reminds me of Charlotte from Sex and the City. And I know it's not real, but it reminds me of her when she closed the cupboard to her 2 kids and she just like broke down in tears and she felt so alone in that moment. And it's kind of like you're that nanny that opened the cupboard and was like, hang on a second, I'll help you out for a tick, you know? Don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but that's what I think of.
Yeah, because we all need that connection, right? And for so long, like, I didn't do any lives. I don't do a lot of live video, but I didn't share anything because I felt like I didn't have it all together.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yes.
When I get it all together, then I'll share and help. But you know what? Even if I know one more thing that I can share, I may not know everything. I may not be able to help with everything, but I have been able to overcome some things, and I can teach what I have learned so far, what's helped me so far. Because if I sit and wait until that moment, there's never going to be that perfect time, you know?
Literally.
Even with the podcast, you said it's on my phone. I have it on my iPhone. I use my voice memo. I'm driving to work and I record a podcast. Like, I don't have a microphone. I don't have all the sound equipment. I don't even use my laptop. I use my cell phone. And then I upload it to the apps. Because why? Because I want to reach out to those moms that need that connection, that need that support. And if it means that's the only time I have, well, that's the only time I have. And I really believe that other moms can start fulfilling their dreams with little chunks of time like that, little bits of time. And so, yeah, I don't know if any moms are listening right now, but if you're dreaming about a podcast, I just want to encourage you with Olivia's program. I mean, you'll get there 10 times, or if not faster, you know, to reach those goals. And you can do it imperfectly, but you have something, you have a story to share, you have something that someone else needs. And if you're even thinking about it, honestly, even if you reach one person with that podcast that you create, it's so worth it. So worth it. It'll change their lives. Absolutely.
Yeah. And their kids' lives is too, essentially. Well, yes. Literally. Yeah.
Yes.
And like, that's the thing, like, you made podcasting work for you. You fit it into your life with what works for you, you know? And yeah, there might be some podcast editors or other people out there that go, no, you shouldn't be doing that. It's not good audio quality. But for me, being a life coach as well, I think it doesn't matter. That's just all the fluff. And your target market and your niche and your ideal listener are other mums. So they're going to get it. They're going to relate to that and be like, huh, if Nettie can podcast from her car while she's driving, you know, whether it's safe or not, it's a different story. Then they might think, well, maybe I can, you know. And that's the thing. Like, if you're always waiting for that day that you'll be perfect and have all your shit together, we're messy. We're not meant to be perfect. We're humans. This is part of the human experience, you know. And there's always going to be other people that are behind you and ahead of you. And your podcast essentially is people that are past versions of yourselves or have, you know, struggled with issues that you might have struggled with or currently are, you know. So there's always a market for that. There's lots of people that need to hear, like, even your story. Like, I'm not a mum and I even liked your story. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Or I can relate to that, or that's a fear that I've got about being a mum. So now I know how to handle that so I don't fall into a heap on the floor. Do you know what I mean? Like, things like that can help. I've actually got another coaching friend actually, and she's just started her podcast. and she's a mum, and she's very authentic on Instagram, because that's mainly where she's built her following, about how she hasn't got it all together, and she shares her good days. She also shares her bad days, which I think is really great, and she brings that to the podcast. And when she first launched her podcast, there was so much that I learned about her that I didn't know from watching her Instagram, like how she thought she'd never have kids one day and was too scared to be a mum. Like, I never knew that about her. And when I listened to a podcast, I learned that, and I was like, I actually like her so much more now, and she's more relatable, to me. And it's built more of like a bond with her. And it'd be the same thing with your listeners as well. Like, that's the beautiful thing about it. And comparisonitis is going to pop up no matter what you do. Like, as you said, your target, ideal listener is wondering, maybe my kids would be better off without me or with a different mum. It's that perfectionist and comparisonitis that pops up. But you're essentially a leader. By having this podcast, you're leading them because you've learnt those lessons, you've worked through them. And, sometimes we have to relearn them and re-go through them in different contexts to really get it. But you can lead those people and positively influence them and impact them, which is so beautiful, like such a beautiful journey. So how do you feel like podcasting has so what was your reason? So, okay, I'll reframe the question. So you wanted to start your podcast because you wanted to help other mums out there. So essentially, do you feel like having a podcast has done that so far? Have you received any positive feedback from anyone, or listeners or friends, family? What's been your experience with that?
So yeah, that's exactly right. I wanted to do that. And I have heard some positive feedback since my podcast launched, and that just means the world to me. And even if I don't get that feedback, you actually talked about this in the program, you're still sharing your heart out there. You're still doing it for the right reasons. So even if you don't get a response, which is great, it makes me feel good if I get, some feedback back. But I know that it's making a difference.
Yeah.
That is, and like I mentioned before, video. I had a hang up with video, and I still am working through that. But with the audio, I can do it anytime too, because it's maybe later on I can do a video and have both. But right now, that's what works for me in this season. So I'm doing that.
Love it.
Doing it through the audio.
Yeah. And a lot of people have hang-ups with video. So many people, like I did. Sometimes I still do. Sometimes there's days where I just don't feel like showing my face. Yesterday was one of them, and that's okay. Like, once again, human, you do what you can with what you have, with what you've got, with where you are, and that's what I think is really a great testament for you as well, is like, that's exactly what you've done. And by you doing that, you're just naturally like already going to give other women permission and other mothers permission to do the same. They're going to go, Nettie records her podcast on her phone. She doesn't need any fancy software. I can do that too. Like, who hasn't got a smartphone these days? No one really, unless you're like, an older, more mature person, potentially. So,
yeah.
Sorry.
There's one other thing I wanted to say was mom guilt will come if you're taking time to build something, something that is so precious and important, like what we're working on. But what I learned through the program and while doing this, that my kids celebrated all the little things I shared with them as I was progressing. They shared with me. They were excited with me, so
that's so sweet.
That meant the world to me, because, they're seeing mom do something hard and doesn't give up on it, and that's teaching them something. I mean, for Christmas, my oldest daughter, she got me was a necklace with a little podcast microphone.
No, really?
So special. Yes.
That's beautiful.
I was like, oh my God, I was so excited. And then where did you find this? She found it on Etsy. But that's like, you know what I mean? Like, yes, you think you're taken away from your family sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, like, they love you. They're happy for you. They'll celebrate with you. You know what I mean? Like, they like seeing you.
But like, by you podcasting, Nettie, you're teaching them two things. You're teaching them that mum has a voice and she can create positive change. And so then they go, well, if mum can do it, I can do it. So you're actually raising like essentially strong women to actually use their voices for good. Like, that's beautiful, and also
I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, that you're not like wearing the one hat of being a mum. Do you know what I mean? Like, like, and I can relate to this myself. And like I said this to my mum all the time, and I love her. But, growing up, she just focused on being a mum. And that was great, but I also didn't know what it looked like to be a woman and a mother. Do you know what I mean? Like those two pieces melded into one. And you're teaching them how to do that. And not just that, can I just mention too, before we even started this recording, Nettie thought the interview was tomorrow. And so as she's seeing my Facebook Live, you know, you're running around, aren't you? And the kids are actually helping you get ready for this and giving you earrings and basically supporting you to do this, which I think is just so beautiful. They don't see it as taking it away. Like they see it as a good thing, which I think is really lovely.
Yeah, my daughter, one of them's 11 and one's 9, and then I have the 1-year-old. My husband's at the dentist with the older kids, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" They were cleaning everything up, and my daughter brought me the pearl earrings to put on, and they're like, "We'll watch Lonnie for you. Watch the baby." So they were out there in the and they're like, and I could hear them. They started to pray for me. You know, they're like, "Okay, help mommy. She didn't know what to do." Like they're talking about out there and praying for me that everything goes well, and I'm like, my heart is just like huge, and just they melted my heart right now because they really did. They're like, see, there's a benefit in having all these kids.
Yeah.
They're so funny. So cool. It was really cool. So grateful.
No, that's amazing. Good on you. I like your girls. That's so sweet of them. How gorgeous is that? So what do you think was the biggest, so okay, we'll start with a few other questions. So what did you like about Podcast Launch Queens like the most, or what was your biggest takeaway from the program?
Just one thing?
Oh, well, you can use a couple.
No, I really appreciated the support, and that you were like constantly posting in the group, like share, you know, what you're working on. I'll help you, you know, I can give feedback. And I'd post something, and by the next day I already had like comments on how to tweak something, or you'd ask me questions, help me think about it. And even from the beginning, you know, you'd voice clip me and message me, and I loved that. It was just personal. And so I felt a lot of support. So that was great. And everyone in the group was amazing and so sweet.
Yeah. Beautiful women. Like, and I deliberately curated it that way. They were lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. That's my favorite thing. I think that it truly was like genuine support that you gave us, one-on-one support. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. And like, you know, you couldn't necessarily make it to every single class, but you still watched the recordings and you still kept up with the progress. Do you know what I mean? And interacted. And that's the big thing. Like I really encourage is interacting will get you further. You know, get your investments worth, get your money's worth. Like totally pick my brains. Like anything you need, let me know, you know, and I'll do that to help you along, you know, getting started essentially. So obviously you were very happy about your podcast going live. Were there any surprises along your podcast journey that you weren't prepared for, or anything that you didn't realize? Like, were there any surprises, I guess, with starting a podcast that you weren't expecting?
Well, I didn't know there were so many platforms, and I didn't know how to strip audio from a video that I already had. So my first episode, I didn't know how to do it, or I don't remember if I didn't remember. I don't know. I was trying to get it on a certain time. So that was a little challenging, but I figured it out. But that, I guess that I was pleasantly surprised, I should say, rather than not. Like I thought it was going to be so much more difficult for me to figure out how to put my audio recording on there. But with all the steps and support that you gave me, I was able to do it without any issues, really. Like the first one was just because I already had a pre-recorded video. But other than that, like you helped me with everything, you know, all the steps on how to do it and how to launch it. And I was like, wow, I was making it so much harder in my head, but because you're so knowledgeable and you like coached us through it, well, not just coached on the technical things, but coached like our mindset and everything. That was awesome.
Yeah, well, I personally think the mindset is more important than all the techie stuff. Like the techie stuff is essential. Don't get me wrong. You literally can't have a podcast if you don't submit it and all that. But, you know, a lot of, as I say in my podcast, a lot of people drop off after the 6th episode or the 6th month because they're not seeing the results they want to see, or they don't actually have the mindset like tweaks that they need in order to be successful, you know, because even along my journey, there's been moments where I've been like wanting to give up or haven't gotten what I've wanted from it, or, you know, imposter syndrome pops up, and you deal with that as you go. Do you know what I mean? But I think at the beginning, it's really about getting the mindset and the psychology right with your belief system before you take the step of starting your podcast. And if people already have a podcast and they're listening to this, that's not a problem. Like, you can still work on that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's about building something, essentially. Like, you're not only are you contributing by having a podcast, Nettie, and helping serve these women, you know, everywhere and anywhere, you're also leaving a legacy for your girls, and you're also you're going to be building your coaching practice, basically. Like, that's how mine took off. Started my podcast first, and then through sharing and giving lots of value and serving, people sense that and they started reaching out and wanting coaching and all this sort of stuff. And it won't be any different for you, you know, if you keep along that journey and keep showing up and coming from that place.
Yeah, it was really helpful for you to explain everything to us, you know, and really talking about to get past that perfectionism, because that was really hard for me in the past. And I still, with the podcast, was working through that. And, you know, just saying, don't look at the numbers, don't look at how many people you want to be following, and like, don't go there yet. Like, just put it out there, just get it out there. And the right people are going to come to you. The right people that are meant to listen to your podcast are going to naturally be attracted to you. You know, you don't have to grab and grasp for these listeners. You know what I mean? Like, just be genuine, be honest, be open, and that will come to you. Like, you don't have to get in that needy energy. So that was really helpful too. And just to take the next step, just do the next thing.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. So if people want to listen to your podcast, Nettie, where would they find it and what would they search for?
So you can type in the Speak Life Mama podcast, and it should pop up. It's the Speak Life Mama podcast with Nettie Rivera, and Worry Less, Trust More.
Lovely.
So maybe I said a whole lot, but
yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And I even remember in the actual group when you had the first couple of graphics to share and be like, which one should I use? Like, even, you know, and all of us have had to work through this. Like, it was very wordy, and we're like, just take this, keep it simple, because you can cover all of that extra words and content in your actual podcast episodes. You know, it doesn't have to all be on the cover art. And it makes it more visually attractive for people to want to, you know, click into it and have a listen. So that's beautiful. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap things up?
No, I know it's on Spotify, and I know it's on iTunes, but there's a lot of other ones. But if you just Google it or type it, it should come up. And it's like, or Anchor. I think Anchor has them all posted on there. But yeah, just the Speak Life Mom podcast, it should come up. And I'm Nettie Rivera.
Beautiful. I know with Libsyn, you can actually choose the destinations of where you want your podcast to go. So if you want to link it to YouTube, you can, Spotify, all these different platforms like Google Play, la-di-da. So I imagine Anchor would have something similar.
Yeah, there's one link. There's one link on there, and it can, like, I can put it in the comments if you'd like, and you click on that and it'll take you to whichever one. You can select which one you want to listen to it on.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nettie, for sharing your story and also your feedback on Podcast Launch Queens. It's been such a pleasure to have you in the group and, you know, be energetically linked up and all that sort of jazz. So it's been wonderful. And, you know, you've even been like a great learning lesson for me, where I've always thought, well, mums don't want to start a podcast because it means it'll cost money or it'll take them away from their kids. And if anything, like, I've worked through some limiting beliefs around that, and you've helped me bust through those, even as, you know, a high level coach. I'm like, if a mother of 6 kids can start a podcast, anyone can fucking start a podcast. Any mum can start a podcast, you know, like, as you said, you live a full, you know, vibrant life. So, and we, you know, in this day and age, we're all quote unquote busy, but it's about making it a priority and seeing how it can actually meet our needs and also meet other people's needs and help us be fulfilled and live out our purpose and all these other things as well. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that we connected. It's amazing. It's just been an amazing journey since we've met. So thank you so much for this.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And if you guys are keen to go listen to Nettie's podcast, I encourage you to go do so. See you in the next episode.